Interactive compositions require the viewer's participation in some fashion. The viewer may be asked to click a button, move their mouse over a button, or even move their mouse cursor off of a button. In Edge Animate, JavaScript is used to create interactivity in your compositions. In this lesson, we'll learn about JavaScript, jQuery, and the Edge Animate API, timeline triggers, JavaScript syntax, events and actions, and creating a one-click button. JavaScript is a scripting language that adds interactivity to web pages. It's a safe bet that you've encountered JavaScript on web pages that you've visited. Most pull-down menus, checkboxes, and even search boxes were created using JavaScript. That said, don't worry if you don't know a thing about how to write JavaScript. As with the animation we've already learned to create in this course, Edge Animate makes it easy. The JavaScript code for your composition is found in text documents that are stored with your other composition files. These documents have the file extension .js. Of course, the JS stands for JavaScript. Take a look at the files for our composition. You can see the .js files. jQuery is a JavaScript library that makes it easier to use JavaScript by taking some of the tasks that require lines and lines of JavaScript code and making those same tasks only require one line of code. jQuery can make the most complicated things simple to do. jQuery is a JavaScript framework, not another coding language. It helps bring structure to the code and make it so that it's organized. The Edge Animate API, or Application Programming Interface, also provides built-in JavaScript functions that you can use. With use of the Edge Animate API, you don't have to worry about writing a line of JavaScript. Together with JavaScript and jQuery, the Edge Animate API gives you control over the level of interaction in your composition. Of course, the Edge Animate API will be your first method of control since it contains built-in functions. Next is jQuery. Finally, there's JavaScript that allows you to create the interaction that you need for your composition. If you want, you never have to use more than the Edge Animate API for creating interactivity in your composition. However, if you want to get more creative and adventurous, both jQuery and JavaScript are there for you. JavaScript is incorporated into your composition using actions, triggers, and events. Actions are what Edge Animate can do, such as loading a hyperlink to changing a property of an element. Triggers are actions placed in the timeline. The playhead will reach the trigger and the action takes place. Events are things that happen. Edge Animate can respond to these events with an action. For example, a viewer clicks on a mouse button. This is an event that will cause an action to take place. Triggers are the easiest way to add code to your composition. We already added a trigger when we worked with symbols, so you should already have an idea as to how they work. Here are some things that you should know about triggers. They're automatically executed, you can place as many triggers in the timeline as you wish, and triggers must have at least 1/1000th of a second between them on the timeline. Let's learn to create a loop using a trigger. A loop means that an animation or a composition continues to play. Once the animation or composition reaches a certain point, it'll return to the beginning and play again. For example, we could make an image of the Earth make a complete rotation during a 3-second composition. If we created a loop, we could make it so when the playhead reached the end of the composition, it returned back to the beginning and played again. In our composition, the clouds move across the sky and the car drives across the road. We want this to play over and over again. Move the playhead to the end of the composition in the timeline. Click the Insert Trigger button. You'll then see this panel. We're going to follow the exact same steps we did when we inserted a trigger in our symbol. In the white box, place the cursor at the end of Insert Code here and press Enter. Now click Playback in the Pick an Action column. Click Play From. Double-click Stage under Pick a Target. As you can see, it's set to play at 1000. Change 1000 to 0 so it plays from the beginning. You can now X out of the panel. If you go to File, Preview, and Browser, you can watch your composition loop. Syntax is the grammar of a programming language. With JavaScript, the syntax is comprised of punctuation and words that work together behind the scenes to create the visuals on the stage. Although you don't have to know how to write JavaScript code, being able to understand the syntax will go a long way to helping you understand the scripts and what each line of a script is telling a web browser to do or display. When creating a loop, we saw this code, sim.play0. In JavaScript code, sim represents symbol. Keep in mind that we're talking about symbol as it relates to JavaScript. The stage is a base level symbol. Other symbols that you may create are built off of the stage, so to speak. They're still symbols, but what you must realize is that JavaScript sees your stage as a symbol, or the root symbol. In the example in this course, the sim was the stage. If you remember, we chose the stage as our target. It was the symbol we wanted to script to target. The base level symbol, or root symbol, contains everything in your composition, including animations and elements. The dot after sim is an operator. It allows you to access different commands. The commands are for the object you identified before the dot. However, objects can also be text and animations. Objects have properties, and properties describe the objects. They also have methods. Methods are things that they can do. The method for our code shown above is play. The parentheses that follow a method contain arguments. There's only one argument for the play method. That's the location in milliseconds where the method takes place. However, some arguments may not even contain numbers. They may contain true or false. Comments are marked by 2 backslashes at the beginning. Comments can be used to let you know what's taking place with the code. A semicolon is used to tell you that it's the end of a complete statement in a line of code. Whereas periods are the ends of sentences, semicolons are the end of a statement in JavaScript code. Earlier in this lesson, we named the 3 ways that JavaScript is incorporated into your composition. Let's review those 3 ways again. Actions are what Edge Animate can do, such as loading a hyperlink to changing a property of an element. Triggers are actions placed in the timeline. The playhead will reach the trigger and the action takes place. Events are things that happen. Typically, events are performed by viewers. Edge Animate can respond to these events with an action. For example, a viewer clicks on a mouse button. This is an event that will cause an action to take place. We already discussed triggers. Triggers are placed at a certain location in the timeline. When the playhead reaches that location, an action takes place. In the example earlier in this lesson, the composition looped when it reached the location where we placed the trigger. Now we're going to discuss events. In doing so, we're going to learn to create an interactive button. The event will be when a viewer clicks on that button. We'll also specify the action that will take place when that event happens. A button is a visual aspect of your composition that a viewer can interact with. Typically, viewers single-click buttons to go to another web page or to submit information. However, buttons don't necessarily have to be clicked on. You can also have rollovers, rollouts, and double clicks. Edge Animate can also provide touch events for compositions designed for mobile devices. For this lesson, we're going to learn to create a single-click button. The first step is to select the graphic or image that you'll use for the button from the Images tab in the Library panel. Once you drag the image from the Library panel to the stage, it'll appear as an element in the Elements panel. Now select the element in the Timeline panel and then click the Open Actions button. You'll then see the following panel. Select Click. A single click is the event that will cause the action. When the viewer single clicks on the button, we want to take them to a different website. Let's learn how to do this. A hyperlink is the address of a website on the World Wide Web. You can add hyperlinks to your composition so that viewers can click on it and then go to the address of the website that you specified. To do so, you'll use this JavaScript statement, window.open parentheses. With this method, you can have the URL open in a new browser window or the same browser window. You can decide which you want it to do. To do this, start by moving the cursor in the white box to line 2 in the script panel. Then under the Pick an Action column, pick Links. Click the button that says Link in New Window. In the white box, enter the URL of the website that you want the viewer to be taken to upon a single click. Let's enter the URL for Universal Class. You can now X out of the panel. Go to File, Preview, and Browser and click on your button. You'll be taken to the Universal Class website.